Hi, I'm Julia Cowley, a retired FBI profiler and host of the true crime podcast, The Consult, Real FBI Profilers. If you're fascinated with true crime and criminal profiling, then join us as we discuss real cases and examine the behavior exhibited before, during, and after the commission of the crime. You can listen to The Consult wherever you get your podcasts. It's as close as it gets to being in the room with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on the Prosecutors, we continue our look at the murder of Jade Beasley. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, by my Song Ming co-host, Alice.
Hello, Brett.
Did I get that one right?
Is that you trying to do an Asian language?
I'm trying to do Chinese.
Oh.
I do it right.
Well, that did not land, but say that again.
Song Ming.
What do you think it means?
Smart.
Oh, Tong Ming. Good job.
Yeah, close. Sorry.
Hey.
Sorry, I didn't do the right, the exact
Okay.
right
All right. Way to go.
elevated accent.
I don't know if it's elevated or just accurate.
The only difference between what you said and what I said is you added a little bit of the T, which I thought was silent. That's why I didn't use. So I didn't say the T.
You say it once and then I'll say it.
Song Ming.
Tong Ming. Very good, Brett. That's I'm actually very impressed. That's actually very impressive. I'm not laughing at you, but because did you know,
Whatever.
those of you who may know Mandarin, there are like 5 tones for every word. So like, tong, 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 tong. Can you tell the difference of what I
Nope.
just said? Okay.
Sound like you said the same word over and over and over and over again.
That's okay. Ming, 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 ming. So 5 to the power of 5 is the number of words that could be because each of those could be 5. Anyways, you did a great job. I'm very proud of you. That was so good. I should not laugh because English is my second language. And I mispronounce a lot of things.
Anyway.
He's like, I'm never going to do that again.
Good to be with all of you again. I'm never going to try again. This is what I got from this.
You should always try.
Don't try because people will make fun of you.
No, you should try because to bring it back to this case, boy, did Jade Beasley fight for her life. And
That's
I actually
true.
really respect that because, well, if you were not already devastated last time, you're going to be even more devastated as we talk about her wounds. But I have so much respect for her because she was not going to go down without a fight. And boy, did she go down with a fight. It's just too bad that she was taken down by someone who gave her no chance.
Yeah, and the thing I feel about Jade Beasley, one thing that kind of disturbs me about some of the conversation about this case is it's sometimes presented as if because Julia was 5 feet tall and however much she weighed, that she could not possibly have brutally murdered this 11-year-old girl. And I mean, we just put a picture up of her. If you're watching this live, if you're watching on YouTube later, she's an 11-year-old girl. She's a child. She's a baby. And whoever did this to her, as you're going to see, brutally murdered her with a knife, stabbed her many, many, many times. And it is impossible to imagine the horror that she went through in those moments when whoever was coming at her, whether it was a 5-foot tall man, as Julia Beverly would have us believe, or whether it was Julia, the woman who had essentially raised her for the last 7 years, whoever it was who came at her with a knife and started stabbing her, it would have been an incredibly horrific experience. But she did fight. She did fight, and we're going to see that as we go through the autopsy.
So we ended last time with the timeline as Julia told the police. Remember, there was a 911 call, and then she went and talked to the police for a couple of hours, and she gave a version of the story. Well, as all investigations go, you have to then verify and then do your own investigation. So there's another timeline because, as we had already pointed out last time, there were things in her timeline that were just merely impossible based on the evidence that was present at the scene. So based on the investigation, we're now going to go through a new timeline. So let's start Saturday, December 5th, 2020. Same place that Julia started. She started work at 7:30 a.m. Remember, she was working from home. This is kind of in the age of COVID. She did customer service for a hotel, and this was what she did often. So she logs in at 7:30. She has a break at 9:30, and she takes her approved break from 9:30 to 10:15, 45 minutes. Now, at 10:39 a.m., so about an hour and 9 minutes after she starts that break, Julia texts Mike, her husband, and Jade's dad to ask if he's off work at the Cracker Barrel. Mike says he expects to get off around 1 o'clock, which is an hour earlier than expected. But note, this is about 2.5 hours left of his shift. She doesn't respond immediately. At 11:23, Julia responds, "Oh, okay." Then at 11:36, that Nissan Pathfinder that Julia says she drives is caught on camera heading into Marion on Corey League Road. GPS data on Julia's phone shows that she's leaving the house around this time. So this tracks that her car and her phone are heading in the direction of Marion.
So a couple things about this that I think are interesting already. Number one, just to make a slight correction, Mike is not her husband. They've been together for 7 years, but they're not married. But, I mean, they live together. They have children together.
Common law married.
Yeah, exactly. Common law married. That might be a good way to put it. So a couple things that I think are worth noting. First of all, as we said last time when we went through Julia's timeline of events, it is perfect in a lot of ways. If you go through the timing of what she says happened, her trip to Walmart in Carbondale, coming back, calling the police, it fits the timeline perfectly. There's no extra time. It's exactly what you would expect to see if she did not do this. If she can verify that alibi, she's 100% innocent. She had nothing to do with this. But you're already seeing problems. So recall, from her description of what happened, she gets that time off request at 11:07. Basically, at that point, she gets dressed. She looks in on Jade, who's asleep. She will later change the story, by the way. If you've listened to Murder on Songbird Road, she changes the story to say she actually spoke to Jade and told her, well, just mess around on your phone while I'm gone. Not her original story. Gets in the car and starts to drive to Walmart. That's at around 11:07. It's going to take her 30 minutes to get to Walmart. Look at what we've already learned. So according to this, she didn't leave 11:10 or so. She left her house around 11:36. About 20 or so minutes, close to 30 minutes later than she said she did. And we know this based on the police did a really good job. There were a bunch of houses around on these roads connected to Songbird Road, Corey League Roads right off of it. They were pulling the cameras off of every trail cam, ring cam, business cam, anything they could find, looking for the man in black or maybe someone else. But they're pulling all this film and they catch Julia in her car, and it's later than they would have expected based on her story. Also, they pull her phone data, which she has with her. And when you know it, the GPS shows that she isn't leaving that house until 10 minutes or so after she responds to Michael's text message telling her, oh, I'm going to probably be home around 1. 1 is also important because that's when Jade's mom was supposed to come and pick her up. So 1 o'clock is becoming an important time. So we already see a discrepancy between her original timeline and the timeline that is based on independent facts, not just what she's saying about what happened.
By the way, pretty good independent facts. This is exactly what you look to, right? Like cell phone pings and also other footage that is not controlled by Julia.
And that's not the last time they'll catch her. So at 11:38 a.m., police catch the vehicle again on Feetsum Road, and the cell phone puts her on Feetsum Road at 11:37 and 50 seconds. So we have these two independent things corroborating that is her vehicle, right? It's not just some other Nissan that's gray and looks like her car. That's her vehicle. She's on this road at 11:38. 4 minutes later, the gray Nissan pulls into the Huck's gas station, and the cell phone also arrives at the gas station. But the vehicle does not get gas. In fact, it doesn't even pull up to a pump. Instead, it pulls up to the trash can in between the gas pumps. A few seconds later, a woman dressed in dark clothes gets out, has a trash bag in her hand. It's I would call it a large package, and you don't have to take our word for it. This video is available now to view. If you go to our website, connect to the Viper Pit podcast, they have put this video up on their YouTube page, so you can look at it for yourself. It is not, as some supporters have described it, a small bag or a bag that would fit in the palm of your hand, or a diaper, which is what Julia's later going to say it was. It looks more like a relatively large package. And she gets out of this car with this package in hand, throws it in the trash can, and leaves. That's at 11:42. At 11:46, the vehicle is back on Feetsum Road. So basically, she leaves home, essentially goes straight to this gas station, turns around, and comes straight back. By 11:48, she's back on Corey League Road. And at 11:53, the cell phone arrives home. So let's talk about this section of the timeline and compare it to her timeline. So she says, and we're going to talk about her interview with the police later, but in her interview with the police, she doesn't mention going to a gas station. She's explicitly asked, did you stop and get gas? She doesn't say she did that. Instead, she says she drives to Walmart in Carbondale, which is a town about 30 minutes away. It's not the first Walmart she would have come to. There was one in her town. Her explanation for that now is that they had some Black Friday sales going on at that Walmart, so she decided to go that one. But anyways, her story is, went there, parked, realized I didn't have my credit cards, turned around, came home, got home at about 12:20. She's calling 911 at 12:24. So, boom, boom, exactly what you would expect. But what we know now from the cell phone is she did not arrive home at 12:20. She arrived home at 11:53, which is 31 minutes before she calls 911 at 12:24. So, what is going on in these 31 minutes between the time her cell phone arrives back home and when she calls the police at 12:24? She now says, well, she sat in her car scrolling through Facebook. Did she scroll through Facebook for 30 minutes? I guess that's what she would tell you. And then at some point, she gets out of her car, goes inside, sees the man in black, fights over the knife with him, and then calls 911. At that point, everything starts coming back together. The police are dispatched, Officer Welch and Officer Sloan. Welch spots the person in black clothing we mentioned yesterday, but this turns out to be a woman. So it's not a man, doesn't really fit the description. They let her go. They continue on. Welch arrives at the home shortly thereafter. At around 12:37 is when police arrive on the scene. So about 13 minutes after this 911 call, and you can listen to it. You listen to the phone and you hear when the police arrive as she's on the phone with them. At around 1 o'clock, Jade's mom arrives to see police are at the scene, and that's when she learns about this terrible tragedy that has occurred. Julia is asked to come to the station where she's interviewed for a couple hours. While this is going on, the police are searching for the man in black. They're bringing out the dogs. They're doing all the things that we talked about yesterday. But they're not going to find any evidence of the man in black. And slowly they begin to learn through the video, through the cell phone, that what Julia's telling them isn't matching the evidence they're seeing. And by December 9th, she is arrested for the murder. Just to go ahead and jump ahead for you, on February 15th, 2023, she'll be convicted for the murder of Jade Beasley. And on January 20th of this year, the Illinois Court of Appeals will affirm her conviction. So that's the timeline, the second timeline of this murder.
And just by the way, with how quickly people are always surprised, I should say, about how slow the wheels of justice turn. So note that Julia is arrested within like 4 days of Jade's murder, but she's not convicted until 2+ years later. And then the appeals process goes on for another 3 years. So there's really only finality now. And then there's obviously, she can file habeases and whatnot. But it took basically 5 years from the time that Jade was murdered for there to be finality in a conviction in her case.
And you're right. And I'm sure she'll try and seek some sort of appeal from the Illinois Supreme Court. Given the decision that the Court of Appeals reached, I don't expect that's going to be very successful. So really, her hope at this point is some sort of innocence movement, some sort of movement that gets behind her, that proves that she's innocent and leads to her being freed, which I think is essentially what the media campaign you've seen around her is designed to do, to point out the flaws in the investigation, the possibilities of alternative suspects, things like that. Now, I will say this. We never hide the ball from you. And one of the ways you don't hide the ball is you do the timelines. And we've said this before. The timelines tell so much of a story. And this timeline is damning for Julia. Like, if you didn't know anything else about this case, you compare her perfect timeline to the timeline proven by the facts and evidence, which no one can question. Compare those two. It's astonishing, number one, and it's absolutely damning. Just the fact that all you have from her is you have this very unusual long break. You have the text to find out when Michael's coming home, which is unusual, not unprecedented, but is unusual. She finds that out 10 minutes later. She's on the road and she's going straight to the gas station where she's throwing something away, turning around and coming back. And just note, imagine a scenario in which she was going to go to Carbondale, to the Walmart, and she realized she's out of gas, and then she realized she didn't have her credit cards. She ain't gone far. She's gone a couple minutes down the road. What would the average person do in that situation? They'd turn around, they'd go back, they'd run in the house, they'd grab their credit cards, turn around, get back in the car, and go back to the gas station. What they probably wouldn't do is sit in their vehicle that's already on empty, that they need gas for 30 minutes. I know I wouldn't do that because I'd be afraid I'd run out of gas sitting there in the driveway. That would be the natural thing to do. That's what you would expect. And then you go back to the gas station, buy gas, and you go into Carbondale and you get your stuff if that's what you intended to do. But we don't see that. Instead, you see this very strange, very short trip, throw something away, come back, and then sit for 30 minutes, apparently.
And by the way, you happen to sit for the exact amount of time that probably this murder is happening inside. And just at the moment that you finish scrolling Facebook, you get up and that's when the murderer decides to run out. When, if the murderers in the house may have already seen you pull up and sit outside and perhaps wanted to run out the back door or any other place or been thwarted. Because maybe if this murderer's inside hasn't committed the crime yet, it's like, uh-oh, I'm about to get caught, better get away.
And once again, this murderer is hanging out in the house during this period of time. So not trying to go out the back door. Now, there are dogs in the back because she left them in the back, even though that was something.
But also these dogs
they
are not
did.
Going haywire.
Well,
right?
it is so funny because the way her story continuously evolves to match what had to be happening. So eventually she'll say, no, the dogs are barking like crazy the whole time. So while she's sitting there scrolling through Facebook,
for 30
the dogs
minutes.
are going crazy in the background. For 30 minutes, yeah. Murderer's hanging out in the house. He's not sexually assaulting Jade. He's not stealing anything. He's hanging out while the blood dries for 30 minutes. Then, as you said, just so happens when he's like, maybe I should get out of here. You know, that weird person in the car doesn't seem like they're going to leave, so I guess I'll get out of here. He's leaving right as she's coming in the door. What a coincidence that would happen. And then even though he's obviously concerned about being caught, because why else would he be hanging out in the house? And even though, as you're going to see in a second, he's brutally murdered this girl. And even though the person he runs into is this tiny little woman who couldn't harm a fly, who nevertheless tries to grab the knife, he doesn't stab her. He doesn't take any aggressive moves towards her whatsoever. He just runs off into the distance, leaving no trail behind.
So we went through the timeline. The timeline is the cops did their job here. I mean, it's corroborated by independent timestamps that all match up. There's GPS data. She didn't turn off her phone. We kind of have her phone. She never said that someone stole her phone. Someone took her phone. So there's no separation of her and her phone or her car because she says she's in her car. Those of you listening may be thinking, whoa, this seems like a pretty clear case. Let me just be very clear. I know that we've done like 500 episodes of different true crime cases, and you probably listen to a lot of podcasts where most of the podcasts are suspenseful, a whodunit sort of situation. Most murder cases, most criminal cases that end up getting prosecuted actually have very clear case files. This is one of them. This is not a head scratcher. This is not a situation where there were 10 people in the house, victim advocates came in and brought bagels and wiped down all the countertops and all the blood was wiped away and we have no idea what happened. And then a parent found Jade and threw themselves on her and all the DNA is messed up and phones were turned off and people's cars were stolen in the midst of it and people's Ring cameras were auto-deleted before they could do it. This is not a situation where there are a bunch of intervening factors that make it a difficult case. This may seem like a straightforward case because it is. And also, most cases, you probably just don't hear about them. Like the vast majority of cases are like this, where the timeline is quite tight and it's corroborated by independent stamps in time that are really hard to overcome. And there is no conspiracy and there is kind of no other question. And so, like you said, the only way out of this, so this case, if I got it on my desk, I'd be like, oh, this is going to be a plea. This person's going to plead because the case is very strong. They have a good attorney. They should try to get the best deal for them. Because if this is a death penalty state, which Illinois is not, by the way, then, I mean, an 11-year-old girl stabbed 104 times, this is a death penalty type of case. So if I'm the defendant's attorney, I'm going to be like, you know what? We need to get the best deal you possibly can because blood inside the car, outside the car, no one else is there. Your phone puts you here and here, and there's, inconsistency in your story. This is not looking good for you. With it being so clear-cut, and this being a clear plea case, doesn't surprise me, because the only way out of this would be a massive serial-type movement where you get media on your side to say, I'm innocent. Not based on the facts, but based on how could I possibly do it? I'm sorry. Having covered Alec Murdaugh in nauseating detail, anyone can do anything at any time. We'll go more into the facts here, but it surprises me 0% that the only way when the facts are this clear, stacked against you, the only move you have is extra legal. It is not within the law. It is not within the facts. It is not within the evidence. It is not within the law. It is to go a different route, and that is to have a media campaign that you're innocent.
Yeah, and I think you've said before, as someone asked, if you were guilty, what lawyer would you hire? And you said you'd hire a good PR person. And I think it's so true. When it's hard to win in court when the evidence and the facts are against you, it is much easier to win in the public sphere because you don't have to lay out the actual facts. You don't have to lay out the actual evidence. You can tell a story in a jumbled, confused way with a lot of assumptions and false statements. And then all of a sudden, people are like, oh my goodness, what a miscarriage of justice. And I think you see that a lot, unfortunately, in the true crime space. What I was going to say, and what I think is interesting about this case that bolsters what Alice was saying, think about the Adnan Syed case, which you obviously had very strong views on, and we think the evidence is quite clear in that case. But at least in that case, you had so many different possibilities for what could have happened. You had the alternative that only an idiot could believe, that Don did it when he obviously didn't do it, and he had lots of exculpatory evidence that he didn't do it. Then you had the guy who found her body, who just so happens to turn out to be kind of, a sex offender, right? Not a great look. He's an obvious suspect for lots of reasons because of who he is, because of the fact he found the body. The fact it could have just been someone random that we don't even know. There were lots of different possibilities for what happened there. But here, Julia has narrowed this down to one of two possibilities. It's either the man in black or it's her. There's no other choice, because she is telling us that the man in black she ran into with the knife. You could imagine a scenario where she goes to Walmart, she comes back, she walks in, Jade's dead, and she has no idea who did it. It could have been anybody, could have been some crazy thing where it was one of her siblings, or where her mom, some weird thing with her mom, or some weird thing with her dad who wasn't really at Cracker Barrel. Or a stranger, or someone who robbed the place, or a man or a woman. Could be any number of things.
A bully at school, some
Exactly.
weird, stalker kid in her class.
Absolutely. Any number of those things could be true. But because of Julia, we know that's not the case. So either there's this man in black who did it, or she did it. Those are your two options. And already with this timeline, you're seeing that she either just lied straight out, or she is incredibly confused about what happened that day. And recall, the story of what happened that day, she's going to tell the police that day. She has the interview with the police that day about what happened. And as you're going to see, she tells a very detailed story about going to Walmart. She doesn't just say, I think I went to Walmart. It's really fuzzy. I can barely think. I can barely see. I've been in a car wreck before. If you're ever in a car wreck, the police come and they ask you questions, and your mind is so fuzzy. You're like telling them what happened, but you're kind of like, you're a little out of it, right? Because of the shock. That's not the kind of story she's going to tell. And if you're really into this case, I advise you go listen to the whole 2-hour interview. Listen to her. Listen to how detailed she is in the descriptions of what she found, and how Jade had been stabbed, and the location of her body, and how her body was facing, and all the other things she talks about in that interview, and then how detailed she is about her own activities that day. Listen to those things and see whether or not that comports with someone who's so confused that they've forgotten, I didn't make it to Walmart. And even when you specifically asked me, did you stop for gas? I was so confused that I forgot that was the whole trip, was going to the gas station. I forgot all those things and told you this story. She's got that massive problem that her story doesn't line up. But then the timeline is just crazy for the man in black. Even if she'd gotten there 30 minutes before, played on her phone, whatever, then gone inside and seen what had happened, even that's more believable than she's there for 30 minutes while he's inside, and then just so happens to go in as he's coming out. This is a huge problem for her before we even get into the evidence of the case. And we're not going to decide this just based on the timeline. Just know the deck is already stacked against her, and we haven't talked about a single piece of evidence in this case other than the cell phone and the videos.
So some of you may be saying, there's been a little shift in tone, y'all. The first episode, we were talking about the story. All of a sudden, you're getting a little bit spicy. Why? Because I'm about to tell you about the autopsy, and you'll see why this is such a horrendous case and a miscarriage of justice that there are airwaves spent on essentially going the only route that Julia has to overcome this. It's not even to overcome the conviction. Essentially just have media on her side, because that's the only thing on her side. Certainly not the evidence. And you'll see what happened to Jade.
Guys, we are so happy to talk about Gusto today. You know that feeling when you finally clean out a junk drawer that's been bothering you for months? That's what switching to Gusto felt like for our business. Payroll, HR, benefits, all the admin chaos that had been piling up, finally organized in one place. Look, we love doing this show, and we are blessed by the fact that it has turned into a business. We have people who help us out in various areas, and we have to run payroll on occasion. And I will tell you, it is really confusing. Even for us, we're lawyers. We still don't entirely understand it. And that's why it is great to have a company like Gusto that can help us. Gusto is online payroll and benefit software built for small businesses. It's all in one, remote friendly, and incredibly easy to use. So you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere.
They have automatic payroll, tax filing, simple direct deposits, health benefits, commuter benefits, workers' comp, 401k, you name it. Gusto makes it simple and has options for nearly every budget. They also have unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price and no hidden fees or surprises. You can save time with built-in automated tools, offer letters, onboarding docs, direct deposit, and more. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/prosecutors and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/prosecutors. That's gusto.com/prosecutors. You guys know that we have a whole gaggle of kids between us. Well, most parents aren't aware that 50% of kids suffer from hidden hunger. Hidden hunger can come from picky eating, processed snacks, or even a lack of nutrient-rich soil in the fruits and vegetables they eat. So if you have a picky eater or a kid who only wants to eat chicken nuggets, like my kids, you're likely going to experience big emotions and frequent outbursts, trouble concentrating, and not being able to stay calm. That's why I'm obsessed with First Day Daily Multivitamins. It's one of the first brands with vitamins designed to fight hidden hunger and nutrient gaps. First Day makes clean, science-backed multivitamins for kids, teens, and adults.
Guys, usually it's Alice talking about her kids, but I have a story for you tonight. Just this night. My kids are getting ready for bed. They hadn't brushed their teeth, and I was like, you need to brush your teeth. And my son looks at me and he says, what about our vitamins? And I was like, yep, you're right. So they went and got their vitamins. They love them that much. They asked for them. Then they brushed their teeth. Then they went to bed. And that's what you're going to get from First Day. No added sugar, no artificial ingredients, no fake dyes, no crushed bones, none of the things you don't want. Just 9 essential vitamins for brain and mood support. First Day's vitamins have more folate than 1.5 cups of spinach, then more vitamin B than 5 cups of broccoli. They are tested for 200 toxins, and they hold the Clean Label Purity Award. This is a product you guys want to get behind. Clinically absorbable, family safe, actually effective. For a limited time only, our listeners are getting an insane deal. Use code Prosecutors to get up to 57% off at firstday.com. That's up to 57% off and a free gift with code Prosecutors at firstday.com. After your purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you.
Ladies and guys, we've all had this experience where we've had a bad shaving experience. You think you have a new razor, you use all the right things, but as soon as you shave, you know it was a bad shave. You get irritation, redness, ingrown hairs. It's horrible, and it takes weeks, if not longer, to get over a bad shave. So why do we put up with these razors that don't deliver the results? And let's talk about women's razors specifically. They feel flimsy and cheap, but yet we have to pay a pink tax, nearly double the money just because we're buying women's products. Well, a self-care routine should be a ritual, but bad razors make it a chore. That's why I made the switch to Flamingo. The first time I tried Flamingo, I knew this was absolutely, shall we say, revolutionary. It was so different than any other shave that I've had. It was so smooth and gentle, absolutely no bumps or irritations when I was using it. I was able to get a closer shave than other razors while making my skin feel smooth for days after shaving. And that's because it's working with your body rather than against it. This razor is not like any other razor I've ever held. It feels balanced and it's intentional. Now, shaving really does feel like a ritual and not something that I have to do, something I enjoy doing. What sets Flamingo apart is that women who helped build Harry's found themselves rolling their eyes when other companies were just shrinking men's razors and making them pink. So they decided to shake things up. Flamingo was born to give women shaving solutions made with their bodies in mind. There's no pink tax pricing, no mediocre design, no irritation. And their starter set has everything you would need, whether it's time for an everything shower or even if you just need to shape up your brow line.
Let's talk about what you guys are going to get. You get Flamingo's original razor, 5 sharp blades, a 360 comfort system to help protect skin, a facial dermaplane razor that sweeps away peach fuzz and exfoliates skin, making skincare and makeup application easy. Foaming shave gel designed to add a pillowy cushion between your skin and razor, and a shower holder to keep your razor within reach. This is probably going to be expensive. I know that's what you're thinking. The whole kit is just $7, and shipping free. What are you waiting on? For a limited time, our listeners can get the Flamingo's starter set for only $7 at shopflamingo.com/prosecutors. Prosecutors. This set includes the Flamingo Original Razor, one 5-blade cartridge, a 1-ounce foaming shave gel, and a shower holder. Just head to shopflamingo.com/prosecutors to claim this offer, and after you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
So Jade suffered many injuries. You can read all of these reports. You can hear testimony about this. Law enforcement who showed up, this was not their first rodeo. This is not like a small town where they've never done this before. These were experienced law enforcement officers. They've seen horrendous things before in their career. This isn't their first day on the job. This isn't their first murder investigation. The people who came to look at the scene, the blood spatter experts, the crime scene investigators, basically all said unanimously, this was one of the worst, bloodiest scenes I've ever seen in my entire career. This was a type of scene that brought grown men who do this for a living, essentially metaphorically, to their knees. That's how bad this is. So we know that Jade suffered many injuries, both to the front and back of her body. Think about that for a second. What do you think of when you see stab wounds to the back? Someone who's trying to run away. Get away, someone who is completely in a defenseless posture. So whether it's because they're asleep or running away, usually when there's stab wounds on the back, it means that they're trying to get away. It's not a fair fight, not even a little, right? And this is, again, a child. There was not 1 or 2 or even 10 or even 20 or even 50 stab wounds. There were over 100 sharp injuries to her body. 15 of these were major stab wounds. 6 were large stab wounds that were to her upper right back in a cluster. So in other words, someone was in a frenzy, stabbing repeatedly, deeply, pulling out the knife, stabbing again. And several of the back wounds penetrated into her right and left lungs. There were other wounds on the lower back. And in addition, she had a cluster of wounds to her chest. So essentially, someone got to her, and the right side suggests to me that it's a right-handed person. That's, someone maybe grabbing her, stabbing so deep that her lungs are punctured, and then either turns her around or has access to her front. It wasn't enough to be stabbed in the back, stabbing her in a cluster in her chest. In other words, these are stab wounds to kill. This isn't to wound or maim. This is in order to end her life. And also, because of what you will see with the scene and the types of defensive wounds she has, this was not a quick death at all. She wasn't slashed quickly and lost consciousness because they struck some sort of, aortic valve and she bled out immediately. That's not what happened here. In addition, one of the penetrated wounds went into the lungs from the front as well. And she had defensive wounds on the palm surfaces of her hands, consistent with trying to grab the knife to stop it. Now, remember Julia's timeline where she said she sees this, she's a tiny woman. We're going to hear all about how tiny she is. She's about 5 feet tall. This man in black runs out. And what does she say she does? She grabs it. Interesting, because if that is in fact something that she may have seen earlier, if Jade were grabbing, that may be front of mind for telling her version of the story. So Jade sees this knife, and she is probably already profusely bleeding and incredibly injured, but she still is grabbing at the knife with her hands, and you see it on her palms. Remember how Julia said she did the same action, but her wounds were not to the palm as you would expect. They were to the sides of the hands. Well, Jade's injuries are consistent with what would happen if you tried to grab a knife as it was coming towards you. Now, Jade had 5 wounds to her left and 3 to her right hands. And what we know from the autopsy is that Jade bled to death. So at trial, Julia's defense noted that Jade was 5 foot 3 inches and 130 pounds. So adult size. Because of this, she is taller than Julia, who's only 5 feet and around 115 pounds. One thing to note, She's a little bit bigger than Julia, but those numbers are not massively different. In fact, if you were walking by them, they're at the store, and you walk by the two of them, you probably would think they're about the same size. 15-pound difference, 3 inches is not huge.
I cannot express to you how absurd the discussion of the size difference is between these two. And I feel like the people who focus on it either have no life experience or are just being intentionally obtuse or just misleading about how they view reality. Because the fact of the matter is, an adult can control a child who's bigger than them. They certainly can control a child who's bigger than them if they have a knife and they're in a frenzy. And I think what you see from this, and frankly, according to Julia, the man in black's the same size as her anyway. So somebody who was 5 feet tall killed Jade. And if you look at the house, it's impossible to tell where this happened or how it happened because there's blood everywhere. Tons of blood.
On the
all
wall,
over the
on
place.
the ground,
on the wall, on the
spatter,
doors,
dragged across. Like they didn't just come from her. It wasn't like the way these blood patterns are. It's not like she was stabbed and then just dragged. Like she died immediately and then she was dragged and blood got everywhere. The way it's patterned, she's running for her life and she's going from room to room, and there are signs of the struggle basically all over the house.
And I think what probably happened is this person came at her with a knife in a rage. She initially tried to get away, and this person stabbed her in the back multiple times. And the fact of the matter is, once you're injured like that, oftentimes your ability to run away and to fight is greatly reduced. At that point, it probably became more of a struggle. And that's when she turned over, and that's when she got these wounds to her hand and ultimately the wounds to her chest. They killed her. We're not going to share any of the photos of Jade in death. We wouldn't do that. But if you look up defensive wounds from a knife, just look it up online and find some wounds, I will tell you her wounds are absolutely typical of that. They're massive. They are brutal wounds. Her hands are sliced up and sliced open. It is clear that she fought, and it is clear that she grabbed at that knife and she tried to save her life. We will show you, and we will put these online on our website so you can see it, some of the just vicious wounds that Julia suffered when she grabbed at the knife to defend herself. Probably the worst one I have on the screen now is a relatively minor cut to her pinky finger on the side of her hand. That's probably the worst injury she suffered. And then she has the smallest little nick on the palm of her hand. And if you can look at the palm of Julia's hand and tell me you honestly believe she grabbed a knife with that hand, well then I guess we'll just have to go our separate ways and we can agree to disagree on where these wounds came from.
But let me know. So if you're looking at these pictures of, it's essentially one slice. And let me just know, it is bad enough of a slice, it's not a paper cut, that if a stranger rushing out of my house did this to me, it would be a very big deal, and it would probably be part of my 911 call and be causing me to heave. Because it is not a paper cut. It's a little bit more. And you know what it looks like? If you were to imagine holding the handle of a knife and to stab it repeatedly into a very hard surface, say the desk or the table in front of you, your hand would slide forward and hit the butt of the blade repeatedly, say 100 times or so, and probably leave a mark. That is consistent with the kind of injuries you'd see from the intense stabbing repeatedly with your hand going to the butt of a knife.
And just to go ahead and give you, this is her other hand. If you're watching this is her other hand. So these are both hands that I've showed you with her defensive wounds from when she grabbed the knife from this person in their 5-second encounter. She grabbed it with both hands. These are the cuts. And Alice puts her finger on something. It is not unusual at all. In fact, it is very common for people who are engaged in a stabbing to cut themselves on the knife, because the knife that they're using is not typically a combat knife. It doesn't have a guard. It doesn't have anything that prevents your hand from slipping. You're not used to doing something like this, and oftentimes you will cut your hands when you are using the knife on someone else. And there's the comparison between these types of wounds that you're seeing here and the types of wounds that you see on Jade's hands, which are very clearly defensive. They could not be more different. You know, you look at her hands, it looks like she had her hands in front of her. The backs of her hands are sliced open. The palms of her hands where she would have grabbed at the knife are sliced open. And then you see Julia's hands and you see the kind of wounds she has. And they just are not consistent with someone who is fighting for their lives.
And I'll say one other thing. If you're looking at the pictures of her hands, there's the clear cut that she is showing and getting photographed. But when you look at the palm, this is not I'm not reading from a police report. I'm literally looking at the photo of her open palm. Notice how where it's on the second knuckle, where that slice is on her pointer finger on this particular hand. I think this is her left hand. If you look across at that same latitude, her other fingers at the second knuckle look a little bit bruised or like it's been gripping something. There's like an indentation, and you can kind of see it in the blood marks of the cut on her pointer finger that there's a slice, but then there's kind of like almost bruising around the side as if you were gripping something very hard. And what's noticeable, she says herself that she washed her hands, and it's clear her hands have been washed, you know, that these like kind of indentations or bruises remain there, which you wouldn't expect if all you were doing was grabbing a knife and then the guy got away and you're left with like a slice. But if you're holding a knife for 104 stabs, for example, you may expect to see some sort of bruising because of the force it takes to hang on to the handle.
Yeah, and it's funny because I didn't even think about this until right now, but I'm looking at my hand and you can't see it in the world. But back when I was a kid, I cut my finger at that exact same spot on my hand with a knife. The knife slipped. I cut my finger. I have the scar to this day, and it's on that exact same place on my hand, which I didn't even think about. But yeah, it's striking. Like I said, we will put these on the website. Go check them out for yourself. You may seem to think something completely different. We are going to share with you as much as we can in this case because we want you to look at it for yourself. For reasons that are unclear to me, much of this information, despite being the subject of a podcast, was never shared. It wasn't until the Viper Pit people started putting stuff up that any of this was public. We've put the transcript for the trial. That wasn't public either. You can read the whole transcript. You can look at these photos. You can watch these videos. Decide for yourself. Don't decide based on what we are telling you. Okay, so I thought this was only going to be a few episodes, but if we take this long on each paragraph, it may take a little bit longer. Okay. But that was very important. The wounds, the damage this young girl suffered, just how brutally she was stabbed to death. And look, I think the fact that she suffered so many wounds, it does speak to the fact that she fought. And honestly, the fact that it took that many wounds to bring her down might even speak to the fact that it was a smaller person who went after her. It wasn't someone who could control her and dominate her with their body. It was someone who needed a knife to make it happen. And that's what they did with 100 different sharp injuries and 15 major stab wounds. That's just absolute brutal attack. Okay, let's talk about the investigation because oftentimes you have a case like this. It's always presented as though, you know, well, just a bunch of bumbling police, locals, they didn't have any idea what they were doing. They were probably biased. They probably didn't like her anyway. And they decided, you know, as police officers are wont to do whenever they find an 11-year-old girl murdered, they think, well, we don't want to find the person who actually did this. Let's frame somebody. And so they framed her. Well, Detective Cindy Geitman testified as to the investigation. She was the lead detective on the case, but because of the nature of the case, and this is smart, West Memphis 3, wish you'd listened to this before, it was not handled solely by the Marion Police Department. Instead, the major case squad was activated, and 6 different agencies came together to investigate this case, with up to 4 dozen officers and detectives working it. That's why they were able to search so thoroughly. That's why they were able to get the dogs out so quickly. That's why if there had been a man in black, they would have found that guy because they were searching like crazy. And not only that, but they had the manpower to do the things that you often wish the police could do in cases like this. Pulling that video from just about every camera in the area, including along the 19-mile stretch to Walmart. And the one thing that stuck out to these officers who watched hours and hours and hours of video is they couldn't find any video of Julia driving to Walmart. And despite the fact that Walmart had these great cameras that covered the entire parking lot, and despite the fact that Julia, as you're going to hear, had a very specific description of where she parked, they could not find video of her arriving at Walmart. And then, wouldn't you know it, they pulled that cell phone information, and suddenly it becomes clear to them that's because she never went to Walmart. And now, even Julia has to acknowledge, you're right, I never made it to Walmart. Which brings us to the interview itself. And we're going to spend some time on this. This may actually cover the end of this episode and the next episode because there's a lot that happens in it. She was interviewed for about 2 hours total by Marion Police Detective Geitman, who we talked about earlier, and Detective Eggmeyer, who was a detective with the Illinois Trial Death Task Force. Because remember, they're bringing in a lot of different people on this who know what they're doing. And I will tell you this, the interview is exactly what this was. It is very casual, very informal. It's not intense. It's not forceful. For instance, they spend a chunk of the interview talking about her dogs and making sure they'll be fed and watered with no one home. And it's a very effective approach. Detective Eggmeyer in particular is just incredibly solicitous of Julia. When Julia talks about how she harms herself, he says, I had a brother who used to do that. I understand that. And she says, I never told Michael. And he's like, well, that's between you guys. We're not going to get in between that. Just very friendly because his approach, and Alice and I have seen this. Modern detectives and modern police, a lot of y'all are still under the impression that the way interrogations happen is they start out in a darkened room with a bright light on you. We beat you for an hour, then we start questioning you while yelling in your face and cursing at you until you confess. That's not true. Oftentimes, interviews can escalate to some yelling. That can happen towards the end. But usually, the way that officers attempt to interview someone is to build rapport, to talk to those people, to get them to feel comfortable with them. And that's how they talk to them. And officers in their minds, they don't eliminate anyone until they're eliminated. If you watched the Delphi documentary, there's a part where the family's talking about their initial discussions with the police and how they got separated. And at some point, it dawns on them, oh, we're suspects, because they were. Because anyone in the family is going to be a suspect until they're eliminated. Obviously, Julia, being the last person to see Jade, and given that she's set up this dichotomy, it's either the man in black or it's me. She's going to be a suspect. They approach her that way. They read her Miranda rights. She waives those, and she agrees to speak with investigators.
So Julia tells police that she went to the Walmart in Carbondale, Illinois. We know this. And Jade's father, Michael, would testify that Julia told him she had gone to Carbondale. And when she came back, that was when this mysterious person attacked her, actually, by her telling. She really wasn't the subject. Honestly, if she could have just jumped back, she probably would have had no wounds on her telling. But that's when she encounters this man running out of her house. Now, she says that she left the family's 2 large dogs in the yard while she went out, which this is actually highly unusual. It's not like these dogs are usually outside dogs, and when she leaves the house, she always puts them out because they have accidents in the house. No, Michael says, no, the dogs are always in the house. That's not something we do. Keep the dogs outside when we leave the house. So this itself is already showing that, something is out of the ordinary here. And also, there's someone else in the house. And if the dogs needed to go out, Jade was home, so there was no reason necessarily that she's been able to point to why she's taken this action that is, as Michael says, unusual. So this would have been a 30-minute drive to Carbondale's Walmart. Julia says that when she arrived, she parked at Walmart, but then she realized she didn't bring her credit cards with her, and so she turned around and went home. In other words, she gets there, doesn't spend any time in Walmart, she just goes home. She got out of her car at home an hour or so after she had left her home on her telling and walked to the door, noticing that only the screen door was closed. As she went to go in, a man dressed from head to toe in black came out of the front door, and he had a knife. She said that she tried to grab the knife from him, and she got cuts on her hands, and then he ran off. She ran to her bathroom to wipe her hand, which was bleeding, and then she ran to get Jade, and that's when she found Jade in the bathroom. She said Jade was in the tub on her knees with her face resting on the edge of the tub. She checked Jade's pulse, but she couldn't tell if Jade was alive, so that's when she called 911. Julia told police that she'd been wearing flip-flops, but she lost them at some point while she was running through the house. Strangely, though, given the massive amount of blood in the house, the bottoms of her feet were completely clean.
And, you know, everything about her story, maybe it's true. Maybe it's all true. Put that aside. Everything about her story is designed to explain something. So, obviously, we talked about how the time is perfect. On her story, time is perfect. It's a great one. Now, the problem is when she tells this story, she doesn't realize the police are going to know she was there 30 minutes before she went inside. So her initial story doesn't involve sitting in her car flipping through Facebook. Her initial story doesn't involve going to the gas station. Her initial story, she gets back, she goes inside. And then this happens. She's got injuries on her hands. You know, she doesn't have the option of doing what I said earlier. She can't just say, I found Jade, because she's got to explain, how did I get these injuries on my hands? Well, I grabbed the knife. And as you'll see when she's telling the story, initially she just grabs the knife. By the end of it, she's grabbed it with both hands. So this guy, he's got the knife. She grabs it with one hand. That one didn't work. Ouch, that cut my hand. Let me grab it with the other hand. Cut my hand. Now I've cut both my hands. Luckily, he's letting me grab both of them and then just running off. He's not actually attacking me, but she's explained that. Then there's the issue, you know, her feet are clean, either because she washed them off or because she threw the shoes away, or, and her telling, well, just at some point, the flip-flops came off, and I guess they must have came off after I'd already ran through the blood, and that's why my feet have no blood on them. Why did she go to the bathroom to wash her hand instead of going straight to look for Jade? You walk into a bloodbath, a slaughterhouse, why is the first thing you do go wash your hands? Well, because they're going to find traces of cleaned up blood in her master bathroom. It's not like all the blood in the rest of the house. Nobody was stabbed there, but there's blood there. So, and she knows they're going to find that. Well, so there has to be an explanation. How did that blood get in there? Well, you know, before I found Jade, I actually went in my bathroom and washed my hands. I got a towel. If you find a bloody towel, that's probably why, because, you know, that was the towel I used to wipe my hand. And then I found Jade. And then I called 911. All of these parts of her story cover some aspect of what happened, either because it's true or because she needed to cover this stuff up and explain it. And you'll see there's evidence we're going to find that she doesn't explain. But she's trying. She's doing the best she can. Julia describes the man as having black clothes. He's an average build. He's a little muscular. He's wearing a ski mask. He's white. He's a little taller than her, though not much. And he's about 5 feet tall. This is also really interesting. So she describes the man as about as tall as her. Let's say that she's guilty. Why does she do that? I have a couple different reasons she might have done it. Number one, and I've said this before, I truly believe in every lie there's truth. And I am convinced Jade was stabbed by somebody who was about 5 feet tall who was wearing black clothes. Happened to be the same color clothes she was wearing that day, and she happens to be about 5 feet tall. The other thing, if she's a little sophisticated, she would realize, well, if I say he's 6 feet tall, I mean, if they do any testing at all on the stab wounds, they're going to say, well, a 6 foot tall person didn't do that. They're going to know that. So he needs to be about the same size as me so that everything lines up. I don't know if she's that smart. It may just be subconscious. She wasn't thinking they were going to ask her that question. So the first thing that comes out happens to match her. But I think there's lots of reasons why you would describe someone as being about the same height as you if you were the person who did it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to know that someone a foot taller, the angles are going to be different, the blood spatter is going to be a little bit different. But actually, also just think about it. If a 6 foot, 250-pound person was running out, she would get a lot more hurt than just the little scrapes. But if she's encountering someone who's close to her size, that might explain why, wow, gosh, you know, I've seen people grab knives before and you're really lucky. That's not really bad. Oh, well, we were about the same size rather than this like overpowering figure, which is really interesting because what is basically the innocence movement for her going to say? That Jade was so much bigger and there's no way that she could overcome. But actually the similar size would account for the relatively innocuous scrapes she has from her hand, considering this is some murderous murderer with a knife coming at her.
She says there were no words spoken. The entire altercation takes place right in the doorway. It lasts about 5 seconds. She describes the knife as a wide kitchen knife, bigger than a steak knife. She says he had nothing else in his hands. It did not appear that he had stolen anything. Later in the interview, she will say that he just ran past her, which is really not that consistent with a struggle. She says her first reaction was to try and stop this attacker. But as I said, the entire interaction takes about 5 seconds. Okay. So what we're going to do for the rest of this episode, because I think it's just worth hearing. These officers, as I said, are really good at interrogations. And they ask her multiple times about this interaction. And she tells 5 times the story of this interaction. So what we're going to do for you now, we've taken these stories out of this interview. You also get to hear a little bit how the interview was, the nature of the interview. And so we'll play one, and then we'll talk about it briefly, and then we'll play the rest. And we'll get through these, and then we will sign off for today. So this is not gospel. There might have been more stories, but I have pulled the first 5, the 5 that I heard of her telling the story of grabbing the knife. So this is the first story.
The knife. When you went in the door, can you start with a description of how you guys encountered?
Oh, he was running out as I was going in. That's when I went to grab the knife. It was definitely big. I mean, it's not like a pocket knife. It was a big knife. So I'm not really sure.
That's our first description of the knife. And as you can hear, it's not interrogation. It's a very calm conversation. She's describing what happened. She's obviously a little nervous. You can tell there's a little shakiness in her voice, but she's telling the story without really any trouble remembering. It's not like she's like, it's all a blur. You know, it was just, he came through. I'm not even sure what happened. I must have grabbed the knife. My hands are all cut up or whatever. You know, it's a very sort of simple story of what happened that night.
I think you're exactly right. You can see the demeanor of this conversation. And let's put it a different way. She's reporting a crime. Like, she's also the victim of a crime. They want to know this. And if, in fact, they're trying to figure out who is this person, is there some crazed knife-wielding murderer out on the street right now? We need to hear about it because you're the only victim so far that we have found who's alive. The other one is brutally murdered and dead right now. So we want to know this information. That's kind of the tenor of this conversation.
And she's even giving a little detail. And it was a big knife. It definitely wasn't a pocket knife. Like, she's explaining what happened, which, once again, I also want to set the stage for her state of mind. Is this the same person who later on is going to misremember going to Walmart or not? Okay, so that's the first story, grabbing the knife. Let's do the second story.
Can you describe, like, when you made contact with the guy that was running from the house? Just, like, well, did you just push it? Was there a fight?
It was as soon as I opened the screen door, it was almost like he was leaving, but he ran into me at that time. So I just kind of tried to stop him, tried to grab the knife, do anything. But yeah, it was basically as I was opening the door, he was coming out.
Okay.
So the altercation between you and him was in the doorway area, right inside the doorway?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. And there were no words spoken at that time?
Nothing.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so they've asked again, because this is what you do. You're asking multiple times because you want to hear, are there any changes? And once again, she very coherently tells the story. She arrives at the door, she opens it. Wouldn't you know it, even though she's been sitting in her car for 30 minutes, it just so happens to be the time as he's leaving and she's coming in. They have this altercation. I try and not judge people based on behavior because I'm not them. I've never been in their shoes. It will always strike me as strange that in this circumstance, in that moment, the first thing she thinks is, this knife-wielding guy, I need to stop him. I need to try and grab the knife. But that's what she says. That she decided she needs to stop it.
And that's really interesting. I was trying to do anything to stop it. At this point, she doesn't know anything other than there's someone in her home. She doesn't know that Jade's been hurt. She doesn't know if he's stolen anything. That's a really interesting kind of foreshadowing of what's happening inside. Now, if you knew something else had happened, I wanted to stop anything because more harm was going to be done, that might make sense. But if, in fact, you have disturbed a burglar and they're trying to get away, why would your reaction be to do anything to stop them? What are you going to do if you pin this guy down? sit on them until the police come, you're only 5 feet tall. So it's a curious kind of slip of inconsistency in her story.
It reminds me of the Idaho case, and there were people who tried to act like one of the surviving roommates. They see Brian Koberger in the house, and they didn't
Run
tackle
after
him
him
or something. And people are like, oh, why wouldn't you do anything? It's like, are you crazy? Why would you do anything? What are you going to do? All you know is there's some guy in your house. You don't realize he's just
And by the
killed
way,
people.
a bunch of people live there, right? And like, who knows?
Yeah.
If this is a 5 foot tall person dressed in all black, what if it were one of Jade's friends?
Yeah.
I mean, truly, you don't know. By the way, let's just talk about how 5 foot is way below the norm of the average male, right? I think the average man is 5'8", 5'6" to 5'8",
5'6",
something
yeah.
like that. 5'6". Let's say 5'6". I'm pretty sure it's 5'6". So this is 6 inches shorter than the average man. It's actually going to be kind of hard to find a man if they're just canvassing the neighborhood to find a man who is about 5 feet tall. And the first thing you think of, I mean, is this man running out with a knife like this? It is broad daylight, right? You would think he's trying to sneak out. Why would your first thought not be, did the neighbor come over and hang out? Did Jade have a friend over?
It is weird that in that moment of shock, your first thing you would do is like confront this person, particularly as a 5 foot tall woman. I mean, frankly, if that happened to me, I was talking yesterday about getting in my car and opening it up, not even realizing somebody had been rifling through it, because that wasn't the first thing that came to mind. I think I would be so stunned to see someone running out of my house. I would not be able to, in those very few seconds, 5 seconds, like put it together enough to say, I need to stop this person. I need to grab this knife. I don't know. That my opinion in this case is not determined based on this, but that does not sound like a very reasonable thing to think happened.
Ladies, with our busy lives, I'm constantly running from school pickup lines to soccer practices to running to court to recording this podcast. In between, I have to choose so many outfit changes, but I have to have the right undergarments. And that's where Honey Love comes in. Because let's just be honest, with such busy lives, I cannot put up with bras and shapewear that just aren't comfortable. Honey Love is truly the most comfortable shapewear I've ever worn. In fact, I'm wearing it right now, and we're recording this late at night. I forgot to take it off because I forgot I even had it on. It makes all of my clothes fit perfectly, and it smooths out all those curves. Honey Love is an independent female-founded brand. All Honey Love products are intelligently designed by women who actually wear them, including founder Betsy, who's highly involved in the development of each product. And you can tell because Honey Love recently launched their new crossover contour bra, also what I'm wearing right now, which features their best-selling wireless crossover bra design, plus built-in molded light foam pads for extra support and a beautifully contoured shape. It's been a long time since I've worn a wired bra, but now Honey Love has given me my favorite wireless bra. And we all know that a great bra is the foundation for any great outfit. You start every outfit with Honey Love, like I do, and elevate your style.
Treat yourself to the most advanced bras and shapewear on the market. Use our exclusive link to save 20% off. Honeylove at honeylove.com/prosecutors. That's honeylove.com/prosecutors. After you check out the Ask Where You Heard About Them, please support our show and tell them we sent you. Experience the new standard in comfort and support with Honeylove. Guys, it's probably hard to believe, but summer is almost here, and with summer comes pool weather and beach weather and all the things we love to do outside. And I'll tell you what my kids love. They love having matching beach wear. And that's where Minnow comes in. Minnow is a family lifestyle brand that embraces clean lines, simple details, and crisp seaside breezes. Whether it's their best-selling girls rash guard one piece, boys boardies, or the unisex rash guard shirts, you are going to love these products from Minnow. All suits have UPF 50 plus protection, blocking 98% of UVA and UVB rays, and your kids are going to love it just like mine do.
You guys, all 4 of my kids have matching Minnow suits, and they even match mom and dad, which makes me thrilled. From my 8-year-old down to the baby, they have something for all of them. And the best part is it is the highest quality swimsuit that they own. We have a pool in our backyard, so we are in the pool just about every single day of the year. Cold, hot, we are there, and we need suits that stand up to it. These suits are so easy to put on and easy to take off, which you parents know is a big deal when you have little ones in diapers, and this is just the right amount of stretch. Premium fabrics keep sand out of the lining, and the swimwear fabric has this buttery, smooth hand feel. It just feels luxurious. Minnow's thoughtful collections allow your whole family to coordinate, and it's been featured in everything from Vogue to Harper's Bazaar. This year, Minnow celebrates 10 years with a special heritage capsule that is centered around their classic, original Minnow styles from their first ever collection. Featuring archival prints, this capsule is rooted in nostalgia and the memories to come. Growing up, growing together, and growing with Minnow. Shop the Heritage Capsule starting April 9th at shopminnow.com and enter code MEETMinnow15 at checkout to receive 15% off your first order. That's shopminnow.com, code MEETMinnow15 for 15% off your first order.
Let's do the third story of grabbing the knife.
Did the male still have the knife when he ran away?
I don't know, because he just kind of ran past me,
Okay.
and at that point I just went in.
Okay.
I really didn't even turn around to look where he was or anything. I just went into the house.
Okay. Didn't know if he maybe dropped it in the doorway or threw it or something that you may have seen.
No, it wasn't in the house. I didn't see it,
Okay.
like in the doorway, so I don't know.
Okay.
Do you remember which hand he had the knife in?
The right hand.
It was his right hand?
Yes.
Okay. And you grabbed that knife?
Yes. I went to grab it with this hand first and then struggled with this one.
Okay. Are you right-handed?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And he didn't say anything to you while you were
No, nothing.
in altercation with him?
No.
Did you say anything to him?
No, my first reaction was to try to stop him.
Okay. This one's interesting because
Very interesting.
this is actually the third and fourth story of grabbing the knife, if you think about it. Because the first story that she tells, when the first officer asks her about the knife, is the one that makes the most sense. That basically, he just runs past her. I mean, that's what she says. That makes sense. You open the screen door, and this man in black bursts out of your house and just runs past you. And he's got the knife. You notice he has a knife in his right hand. And as Alice noted earlier, most likely this was committed by someone who's right-handed. And it turns out both the man in black and Julia are right-handed. So she says that. Okay, that makes sense. But then you have the lady detective comes in and asks the question again. And this time, she's struggling with him. And she says, I grabbed the knife with one hand. And then I grabbed the knife with the other hand. And it turns into there's this weird struggle going on between her and this guy, this silent struggle.
And that's the thing, the silent struggle. If I'm grabbing a knife, at the very least, like, I was yelling or like expletives were coming out of my mouth. When someone surprises me, I can't help but yell out. Right? My kids love this. They love hiding behind every corner. This is like my least favorite game that they have right now, where they like to jump out in the dark at me. And I always yell something. Oftentimes it's an expletive because I'm not prepared for it. But they're asking this because it is a little strange that all of this is happening. None of it's like, pigs must die. You'll never get me. Or like, screw you. Nothing. Right? No, we're in complete silence. And note how she is very sure. She doesn't hesitate in the least when asked about the hand. There will be other specifics that she's asked about where she's like, I don't really know. But this is not a situation where it all happened so fast. I don't know. I was struggling. I was really freaked out. This has never happened to me before. I don't know. No, she answered directly. There was no pause. There was no beat. She said, right hand. The interesting thing that stuck out to me in this third and fourth version of the story is she says, she struggles. She grabs the knife, struggles with the other one. So this is not a brushing past. Now it's, I grabbed it with one hand. I'm struggling. He's running away. You don't know who's in there. You don't know if he's by himself. So you're going to run in the house. Now, of course, everyone reacts differently. But the first thing is not to run in the direction of your neighbor. Again, we're talking about noon, broad daylight. Even in December, broad daylight. in Illinois.
She didn't even lock the door behind her.
She didn't even lock the door behind her. But she's going to run into the face of danger. Not only does she run into the face of the knife with her hands, she also runs into the face of danger. Who knows who's in there? Maybe there are a bunch of people in there.
And once again, I feel like, because there's always people who you mention a fact and they're like, well, they think she did it because of this thing. That's the only reason that she did it. It's like, no, that's not right at all. But once again, I'm always hesitant to talk about weird things people do in stressful situations. But it is weird to me that you're right. She doesn't run to the neighbor's house. She doesn't lock the door behind her. And that the very first thing she does with her very minor cuts on her hand, and she's like, man, I need to go wash my hands. My hand's bleeding. I need to go wash my hands.
She doesn't call the cops
I just
first.
saw a guy with a knife.
Or
go look for your stepdaughter.
First. Or scream out for her.
Scream out for her. Yell for her.
Because here's the other thing. Jade is so much bigger than you. She's a whole 3 inches taller than you. Yell for help. Because maybe at least if you have a witness or someone else comes rambling down the staircase, you have help because you are in the face of danger. Someone has a knife and you're this tiny 5-foot woman. Call your massive, huge, 115-pound, 11-year-old stepdaughter to come down and help you. That doesn't happen.
I realize Jade is her stepdaughter, and some people put some stock in that, and maybe they didn't have a very good relationship, but it's hard for me to imagine anyone raising a girl for 7 years, from the age since she was 4 to 11, raising her for 7 years and not loving her and not caring about her to the extent that that's the first thing you would think about. As a parent, I know the first thing I would think about would not be the minor cut on my pinky finger. It would be my kids. It would be like figuring out whether they're okay. And I've got to think, if you left this girl that you've raised and that you've loved, that would be the first thing. But it's not. The first thing she thinks about is washing her hand in the bathroom. That's the first thing she thinks about. And that's the first thing she does. And once again, not deciding this case on that basis, but I do think when you're trying to judge people's credibility, it's worth thinking, is what you're hearing, does it make sense to you? Does it fit with your common experience or not? Particularly when you then start to pair it with things like the fact that she lied about going to Walmart or seriously misremembered going to Walmart. The fact that she initially said she got there, she got out of her car and went inside. And then the story becomes, oh no, I actually sat in my car, my gasless car, for 30 minutes looking at Facebook. The fact her story keeps changing. And then you add into that the behavior that does not fit with common experience. And I think that does begin to have more weight than it just would in isolation, because this is circumstantial evidence. Nobody witnessed this happen. It's going to be circumstantial evidence. Put it all together for yourself. Add this stuff together and tell me where it ends up for you. But we're not done. Now let's do I have it called the fourth story, but I guess this is actually the fifth, because she gave 2 stories in that last one. Here we go.
Okay. Run this back through from when you leave Walmart so we can get a pretty good understanding of this.
So I left Walmart, came home. I saw the main front door was open, screen door was closed. I went to go inside, grab the door. As I was opening it, he was coming out. That's when I tried to grab the knife, cut my hand. He ran past me. I ran in. I went to my bathroom, washed my hand real quick, just real quick rinse, wrapped the towel on it, and then I ran to go find Jade. And that's when I saw her in the bathroom. I tried to check for pulse, and then that's when I called 911.
All right, so this is the latest story. This one, she's kind of in a rhythm now. We have she tried to grab the knife. This one is less intense than the last one. Remember the last one, there was a struggle. She's struggling with the knife, and then she's struggling with the other knife. This time, it's she gets out, comes back from Walmart, gets out, sees the doors open, opens it, he's rushing past. She grabs the knife, manages to cut her hands. She makes very clear that's this. I got these cuts on my hand when I was doing that. Rush inside, go to the bathroom. Just a quick rinse, because everybody knows when you cut your hand, you got to do a quick rinse. If you don't, who knows what might happen to you otherwise. So she does that. Then she goes to find Jade.
It would be more believable to me if she went to go find Jade before dialing 911. Like, I probably would honestly, I don't know which one I would do first, call 911 or run after my kids, right? Because they're both so important. But it's interesting the way she tells the story. She didn't think to call 911 until she saw Jade. Now, why is that important, though? It's important for her story because she wants to already be sobbing on the call. She wants to have Jade discovered as opposed to have the discovery of Jade be captured because that may not be as genuine, what have you, right? So the order of events is important here as to why she has to discover Jade before she calls. But it's interesting, she's not saying, I was looking for my phone, I dropped my phone, but all I could think about was Jade. Nothing. There's actually nothing like that, even in her own telling of the story.
Okay, so we got one more. There may be more, but we've got one more story of her grabbing the knife, and then we'll go ahead and cut it off for today. So this is the last story that I pulled from this 2-hour interview of her grabbing the knife.
So it was as you were, when you pulled into the driveway, did you notice the front door was open, or?
I didn't at that time, no. I just kind of pulled up.
Okay, and then you go in through the front door, and can you take us back to that?
I went in through the front door, main door was open, screen door was closed. As I opened the screen door, he was coming out, and that's when I went to grab the knife, got cut. He kind of ran past me after the struggle, and then I went in, went to the bathroom, cleaned my hand. But you guys did, brush up against one another? And a quick brush, yeah, it was a brush, though.
Can you run us through that again?
So just my left hand went for the knife first. I got cut. I went with my right hand again. Just kind of struggled 5 seconds maybe, and then he just kind of ran past me as I ran in.
Okay. So you get to the door. Well, you come up this way because of the stairs. Get to the door. He opened the door, and he's coming at you, and then just after the knife. Okay. And run me through that part again, please.
So I went to grab it, got the first cut, and then I went to use my other hand, and then just tried to grab it some sort of way. And while we were kind of like this, he ran past me.
Okay.
And as I was going this way to get in.
How high do you think your hands were as you're fighting on the knife?
Like here, right above my head.
Okay. Did he have the knife raised at you? Did he have it like this?
It was raised, like he was coming out like this.
Like he was wanting to do this?
Yes.
Okay. So he comes to the door. Did he have the knife left hand?
Right hand.
Right hand?
Because to open the door, I used my right hand.
Okay.
So that's why I went with the left hand. And he had it, he was like this, so I just went straight for it.
Okay. So you go straight for it, get cut a couple times, and then does he just bump you out of the way? Does he kind of go against the house?
I don't think he did go against the house.
Okay.
Not really sure though, because he just right by me.
Okay, but he brushed up against your shoulder?
I'm pretty sure, it's so much happened, but I'm pretty sure he did when he ran past.
Okay. So the jacket could possibly have...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, now, one thing that's really interesting about this interview, this one detective he's always getting her to do things because he'll say, oh man, maybe when you interacted with him, maybe you got your hands underneath his gloves because he's wearing gloves. Maybe there'll be DNA, on your hand. We should swab your hand for DNA. We should check this for DNA and that for because when you were doing this one, there's transfer. He's doing this the entire time. So notice this is the last time she talks about this whole knife thing. And what does she say? You would think she would want to say, oh man, it was a fight. We were struggling with that knife. And she does. But then on the other hand, she's like, but it was a brush. It was just we barely touched each other as we passed because she knows they're not going to find his DNA anywhere on her, right? So if she tells this story of this really intense struggle they had Then it's going to be like, if you guys had this massive, intense struggle, why is it we DNA tested you from head to toe and we don't find any foreign DNA on you? So she's balancing this story of, yeah, you know, the man comes out with the knife raised like he's Michael Myers in Halloween.
Which is so interesting that he would be deterred if he was so insistent. Like he was lying in wait for her. And he runs out with this knife above
and
the
this
head.
is the first time he's coming out with the knife up, like he's attacking her.
Yeah. And that's
So
all
then
she gets.
She puts her hands up to defend against this man who's trying to murder her. He's trying to stab her. And I mean, let me just say, we all know this. Even if they're the same size, he's still a man. Muscle mass is larger. He's attacking. She's surprised. This is an incredibly dangerous situation for her. He's got the knife. You would expect to see some pretty serious wounds on her. Go to the website and look at her hands. Tell me if the wounds on her hands are consistent with someone who was struggling against a man with a knife raised, ready to stab her as he's coming out of there. And the only thing that protected her was the fact that she grabbed that knife. She saved her life right there, grabbing that knife. That's the new story, the last story. Tell me if the wounds you see are consistent with that story or not.
And all silently.
Oh, yes. All very silent. It was a silent assault that was happening to her. Okay, so there you go. We've got the story of the attack, how this all went down, how she kind of struggled but really just brushed against, and he rushed out, but they also fought over the knife, how she got these wounds in her hand. She's always very, very clear to say, that's when I cut my hand. So you notice these hands? That's how I cut my hand. She's always very clear to say that. We've covered that now, but that is not the end of the interview. Next week, we're going to start back with this interview, and we're going to talk about the rest of her day. In particular, she gets off work and she goes to Carbondale, and we're going to play for you more examples of her telling this Carbondale story. We'll play several clips where she describes her trip to Walmart and what she did at Walmart. And I'll go ahead and spoil it for you. It's not going to be vague assertions of going to Walmart. You're going to hear a detailed story of going to Walmart and realizing your credit cards were missing. So you're going to hear that next week. Obviously, we'll talk more about her trip to Huck's. We'll talk more about the search for the man in black. We'll talk about the scene, and we'll talk about some of the physical evidence in this case. Honestly, we might get through the whole thing next week, but probably not. I'm thinking maybe this is a 4-parter, but I'm thinking 4 episodes is probably what we need to cover everything in this case. All right. So I'm sure you already have thoughts. Shoot us an email, prosecutorspod@gmail.com, @prosecutorspod for all your social media. Let us know what you think on the gallery, which is already discussing this case. Go to our website, prosecutorspodcast.com, if you want to read the trial transcript, if you want to see some of these images, if you want to watch some of the videos. If you want to really deep dive into the case file, as I said, the Viper Pit podcast has done like 10 or 12 episodes on this at this point. So worth listening to as well. Alice, do you have anything else you want to add?
I think having gone through the really intense wounds, this is a very straightforward case in a lot of ways. The wounds are horrific. We went through them. They could have been in more detail, but suffice it to say, it was a horrific end for Jade, and she fought for her life. And it's also really interesting because we have the very words of the person who is ultimately convicted for Jade's murder. You are the jury here. You are getting to hear her affect, the way she responds to questions, the way she's being asked questions. This is not a 12-hour-long, interrogation. She comes in willingly. She has to explain things. And if you're saying, why is she so stupid? Why is she saying things that are inconsistent? She's not stupid at all, actually. She's thought through this with a chillingly cool head about what she needs to explain. Because Jade will be found within a couple hours, because we know Dad is coming home. Mom is coming to pick her up for a birthday party. I think it might even be for her, half-sibling's birthday. It's for a child's birthday party that she's going to. This is going to be discovered quickly. And she has things she needs to explain, like her whereabouts, why she wasn't there, and her cuts, most importantly, because those are very visible. And so she has, in fact, through all these things. And the reason you may be thinking, oh, this story's not really making sense, is because you know what? It's really hard to make lies line up.
Totally true. Totally true. Well, Alice, do you want to answer a question, or do you want to
Sure.
sail off in the sunset?
Let's
on the basis
answer a
of that?
question because I'm
What was that?
heated up for Jade.
Okay, so this is a great question. It's from someone named Joe M., which I might know who that is, but I'll ask the question anyways. It's a 5-star review, so it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
If you were on death row, Brett obviously for aiding and abetting a mass prison escape that led to a mass murderer being released, and Alice wrongfully convicted, of course,
Aw, thanks, Joe.
what would your last meal be? That's a great question. That's hard. This is where you want to be someone like Glossop, who almost gets
It is hard
executed
because
like
it's your
6 times.
last meal.
Yeah. I think according to Texas, fried shrimp is the most popular request for last meals. Everybody loves fried shrimp. Can you choose a final alcohol as well? Like back in the old days, you got to smoke a cigarette before they shot you. I don't know. It used to be you got a shot of whiskey and a cigarette, and then they shot you. But I guess it depends. And like, can you choose anything you want? Let's assume you can. A lot of states have actually put restrictions on the last meal because people would get things that were so extravagant, they put restrictions on it. But we're not having any restrictions on this. So you can have any combination of food, any food you want.
There's
They
so
wanna
many
answer
ways
that
to go
shit.
about this because being a good Texas girl, I do love steak a lot. And my favorite seasoning, I was introduced to this like later in life. It's not like I grew up with this seasoning. Have you ever used Tex Joy steak seasoning? Go to Amazon because they don't sell it here where I live. So I buy it on Amazon or wherever you can get it mailed to you. But it's like available everywhere in Texas. It's my favorite seasoning. So it has to be steak made with that seasoning. It's not like expensive seasoning. It's actually probably very inexpensive. But I don't know if it's just because steak smells so good. But I also, you know this, because I regularly have this meal with you and Mrs. Brett. I love pho. I love Thai food. I love Indian food. So like I could have an amazing Indian meal or just a massive bowl of noodle soup. But do I want that to be my last?
That's the thing.
You know,
That's the
like could I
thing.
start with a bowl of like beef noodle soup at lunch and then have like a whole steak for dinner? And then obviously I need to have dessert. But
So-
I do love pho so much. Like so much.
Yeah, there's so many great foods that I would want. I just
Would
think
it be
about all
whale
the great
for
foods
you?
I've had.
Would it be
not
for whale?
So I would definitely want. Okay, let me say, if I'm limited to sort of a standard meal, you know, of what's available within 15 miles of the prison, give me some really good fried chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, some biscuits, maybe some fried okra. Like, give me a traditional Southern meal. I'd be happy with that, right? If that's what I'm limited to. But if I can have anything, then I want a foie gras terrine from Josephine in Paris. You're going to have to ship that to me. I want one of those ribeye steaks from that place in Germany that I went to. I want one of those. I want some Dreamland ribs when they make them good.
Good
from
ribs.
the original
Oh, good
Dreamland.
ribs. Yes.
Or from Archibald's. Either one. I'll take either one with that really good vinegar-based sauce. I want some of those. I do want my mashed potatoes, my fried okra, maybe some fried green tomatoes, maybe some cream
that's
corn thrown in there as well. Maybe some of my mom's chicken and dressing. Fantastic. I want some of that. And some bluefin tuna sushi. It's a wide combination. And then,
Wide combination.
let's see, a baked potato with my mashed potatoes.
With all the
'cause I love a
fixins?
baked potato. With all
What
the
do you
fixins.
like on your mashed potatoes?
Mashed potatoes, I just want sort of standard
I'm
mashed
sorry,
potatoes
on
with
your
gravy.
baked potato.
Okay, so I like a lot of sour cream, a lot of butter, cheese, bacon, and I like the outside to have a lot of salt on it. That
Yes.
salted jacket for the baked potato. I want that. A bowl of udon, some udon to go with it. And then for dessert, I want a slice of my mom's apple pie. She makes fantastic apple pie. It's got like pecans on the top of it. Oh, it's so good. Mom's apple pie. The peach cobbler from Georgia Brown's in D.C. I want some of that because
That is a really
so good.
I can taste it when you say that.
I know it's
I
so
think we may
good.
have eaten there together.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. and a bowl of Bluebell homemade ice cream. That'll be my meal, my final meal.
But you
And I
know what
might
would be
mix
so
the
disappointing
Bluebell
if
with
any
the
of
peach.
that were not prepared to your liking. Like, I
true.
love mashed potatoes, but not well-cooked mashed potatoes.
Well, I'm assuming I'm
taste
getting this,
from these
this
places.
meal
I get it. No, I got
is the perfect meal.
That is pretty good. And one thing, I mean, I can't beat that. You've just
Georgia
like,
Brown's went out of business?
What?
Are you serious?
Oh,
Jason
man.
Blair?
But
Oh, my goodness.
Wait, Georgia Brown's. There was like it owned a bunch of them. You know, like
talking about
there
the
were.
one- oh, you're
Maybe they
Googling.
just changed the name. Because did you know restaurants did this? Like every 7 years, there was that one place on U Street
Georgia
that
Brown's
changed
been
their
around
names
for
every
forever.
2 years because that's how like you stay in business. So maybe Georgia Brown still exists.
He's right.
Just
Permanently
not as
closed.
Georgia Brown.
How did that happen?
I forgot to add that I love scallops. I love scallops
man.
cooked in butter so much. I'm sorry about your Georgia
I'm
Browns.
reading the article now. This hits me right in the heart. It closed end of last year. Oh, my goodness. How did that happen? This is DC's falling apart.
It really is. If Georgia Brown's is closing,
Georgia Brown's, man.
I
That
ate
was
so many law firm meals there.
first time I went to Georgia Brown's is when I spent a summer at Georgetown. Didn't have any money, but we got some together, and my now wife and I went to dinner there. I got the rabbit leg. I forgot what she got. Or maybe she got the rabbit. One of us got rabbit. Got that peach cobbler, which is incredible, and a watermelon martini. I remember we had a watermelon martini. It was so good.
What was that place that was near? It was near DOJ. It was a Indian restaurant, and they had a crispy
Rasika?
fried spinach. Rasika's crispy fried spinach.
The choc palat.
We would go there. I think you and I went there because we were poor too. And like we would go for happy hour because the appetizers would be like $5 as opposed to $45. And I remember just sitting there eating
Palat
the
choc.
choc palat. And
Palat choc
so
from
good.
Rasika.
Rasika is probably the best dish. I could eat just that.
Add that to my last meal. I'll take some of that too.
I can still taste the crisp in my mouth. Oh, if someone would bring me that. You can't bring it anywhere. That's the thing. You have to eat it there because it has to be steaming fried from the kitchen. I think we each ordered one time. Like we
Jason
just
Blair
ate
is probably
a
going to
whole
tell me
thing.
that Rasika's closed.
Don't
now,
tell me
too.
Rasika's closed.
One other place. Okay, I'm going to add in one other dish, one other thing to my last meal. So there's a place called the Afghan Bistro, which I've talked about before in Springfield, Virginia. It's in like middle of nowhere strip mall. If you're in Springfield, go there. It's amazing. And they give you Afghan food is amazing, but they have this bread, and it's hard to describe it. It's not naan. That's the thing about Afghan food.
It's like spongy, right?
It's a little spongy,
Is
but
it the
not
bitter,
as
the
spongy.
bitter bread?
It's not as spongy as like Ethiopian.
I'm
right?
thinking Ethiopian, which I
That's
really
what's
like.
amazing about it. It's like this crossroads of all these different cuisines, and they all came together in Afghanistan. And so the food it's like similar to things you've had before, but not quite the same. But they give you the bread, and they give you this mango chutney. And I could drink that stuff. It is so good. There's a mango chutney and an avocado chutney, and I mix the two together, and I take that bread and I dip it in it, and I can eat my body weight in bread from that place. So if you're in DC, Afghan Bistro, they have a place called they have a place in the Heights in DC. I forget what it's called. It's another place. Look at Afghan Bistro. If you're in DC,
I'm
they have a
looking
sister
up
restaurant.
my favorite Ethiopian restaurant in DC. I lived down the street. It was near the Studio Theater. It was across the street from Studio Theater.
Arakosia is the name of the Afghan Bistro in DC.
I used to volunteer at the Studio Theater. Not volunteer. What do you call it? When you show people to their seats?
Not a docent. You're a
No,
usher.
not that fancy. I was an usher so that you could get free tickets because I had no money, but I really wanted to see shows. I think they still do that. They have a very active, most of the theaters in DC have that. But I Le Diplomat is close to Studio Theater, but that's what I'm thinking of. I am thinking of, I hope it's still there.
Le Dip.
Oh no, I think it turned into a Chinese restaurant.
I'm sure it's wonderful.
I'm sure it's wonderful. I've never been there, but there was an Ethiopian restaurant that was across the street from Studio Theater that I would eat at every time I went to go usher, because you'd usher at like 2 p.m. on a Saturday so you could watch a show. And it was incredible because I spent time in Eritrea, which fought a war with Ethiopia. The foods are very similar. And we didn't have electricity that summer that I worked there, but we had a lot of fantastic food.
If I'm still hungry after eating all that, I wouldn't mind having a clay hot pot Korean with some, what is the beef called? What do we call it?
Bulgogi?
Bulgogi with some bulgogi in it. You know, you get
Why did
those
Costco
clay
get rid of
pots.
bulgogi meat?
I know.
It was so
killed me.
good.
You get those clay pots and the rice is like caramelized
Crispy
on the bottom.
at
So
the
it's crispy.
bottom, and you have to like scrape it off.
It's another meal to die for. So, anyways,
I'm hungry now.
I'm hungry now too. Okay. Great question, Joe. Thanks for asking that.
Now I really am hungry though.
I know. There's something called Indo Bistro and Grill here in Montgomery. Maybe I'll try that out.
Indo Bistro. I think I've been there.
Indo Bistro and Grill.
Not-
It looks
not
good.
bad
A
at
journey
all.
through Indonesian taste.
You know, I really don't miss living in a big city. Oh, we forgot about ramen. I would get some ramen as well.
See, ramen's fine, but I wouldn't eat it as my last meal.
No, homemade ramen, like homemade
you're
pho,
on that
is a whole different dish.
I
You've
would
never
probably
had
know
ramen.
if you'd ever made it for me. I would be like, oh.
You don't come to my
this is so
parties.
good. So good.
You know, the other day when you did come to my house, I had
You did
made
make me
scallion
ramen.
pancakes, and I was totally going to make you scallion pancakes, and my kids ate them all. So I didn't tell you about them because I didn't want you to be like, darn, I wanted scallion pancakes. Because
This
fresh
Indo
scallion
Bistro
pancakes.
place. was
You should
pretty
try
awesome.
that. I think I went there for lunch one time.
Where is it?
It's where the H Mart will never open.
Is it over there?
I think it is, if I'm thinking
Because
of the
my
same place.
favorite Korean place is over there.
Yes, I think we've been there as well.
It's funny because there's nothing that gives like its address.
No, I found it. I found the Ethiopian restaurant. Kirscher Ethiopian Restaurant in Mart.
Kirscher.
They moved, though, because that's further than it used to be. But that's the Ethiopian restaurant I'm thinking about. Is it? Yes.
next time
4.5
you're in
stars. Low-key eatery serving regional Ethiopian dishes. Plus wine and
Indo
beer.
Bistro. It's over on Eastern Boulevard. Oh, next to the Bolero.
I
Oh,
never
check
went
it
to the
out.
Bolero.
Yeah, I
You
want to check
should.
it out. Indo Bistro and Grill.
Now I want this Ethiopian food.
I'm gonna go there tomorrow.
I bet
Okay.
Vegas will have some Ethiopian food. We could
Probably.
probably go search it out.
Probably. All right. Listen, if you want to see us record these episodes, you can join us on Patreon for $3. You also get the episodes early and ad free. If you don't like Patreon, you don't want to do Patreon, you can also do Apple for $3. You also get the episodes early and ad free. All right, guys, we will be back next week with more on this case. But until then, I'm Brett,
And I'm Alice.
and we are the Prosecutors.
So I'll share with everyone, the 35 people here. So we just put down Allison to bed, the last of the
You said
four
that, it
kids.
sounds like you took him out back and shot him or
Took him
something.
out back. I took, put him down. Put her down. Broke a leg. Put her down. And like, you know how you feel after you put down a kid? Like it's like wrestling an alligator. Just you kind of want to face plant into the couch. And so we like got out from putting him down in his bed. And then Mr. Alice looked at me and was like, "All right, you. Now you get back to work." Which is
And here you are.
this. Okay. Sorry, I said, yeah, we could answer questions.
Oh, I thought you said no.
Oh, I said, yeah, I'm heated up. We can. You don't have to, but
What do you want to answer a question?
sure,
We can
let's
always-
answer a
All
question.
right,
We
never
promised
mind.
them a question.
Work this in. All right, let's ask a question then. All right. Is Alice frozen, or is she just so deep in thought? I can't tell.
TV has thousands of free movies and TV shows.
We're coming at you with everything we got.
This is the mindset.
Free.
This is the mantra.
Free.
This is the mindset.
With movies like Pineapple Express, the entire Star Trek film franchise, and Gladiator, and TV shows like Survivor, SpongeBob SquarePants, The Fairly Odd Parents, and Ghosts, Pluto TV is always free. Huzzah! Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.